Hello, I'm Alex from Barefaced Audio, makers of arguably the finest guitar and bass cabs in the world, and I'm pleased to tell you we have made an improvement. And I don't know how we didn't think of this sooner, but such is life. It's nothing life-changing, but it is a great convenience if you're the sort of guitarist who likes to experiment with the drivers in your cabs, or on the rare occasion someone blows something or has a fault or anything like that, because it makes it easier to get the grills on and off, and it makes it easier to get the drivers out. So I'm going to do you a little video showing you this uprising. So this is our vertical 2x12 cab, and at the moment it's got our stock drivers in, back here inside, which are vintage 30s, which you can just about see through the back here. So this is all our cabs are ultra lightweight compared to normal guitar cabs, and all our guitar cabs have the AVD, augmented vent diffractor, in the back, which harvests the back wave from the cab and from the speakers and sends it round the room, so you hear yourself with a much more consistent tone wherever you are, which works better in rehearsals, it works better when recording, it works better live, big stages, small stages, whatever. The only time it doesn't make any difference is when you're in a big open space with nothing for it to reflect off. But that doesn't happen very often. Because of the AVD, our cabs are built differently to normal guitar cabs. So our speakers are front loaded, grills are made a different way, so it does make them more expensive to build, but you get much better sound. And one of the strange things in the world of guitars is people don't tend to spend very much on cabs and speakers, because I guess they've all just been much for muchness, not very designed in the past. So here we have cab. To get our grill off, just need to loosen these bottom corners. Just get out of the way of the grill, just a bit more. One corner out of the way, don't lose the screws. And then you will note that we have put a pull tab here in shot to help you pull the grill out. So I suggest you insert a screwdriver through it. And the grill has Velcro tape holding it in quite a few places, because what we do never want is things buzzing and rattling. So the Velcro tape does stick pretty firmly, so it takes a fair pull and some consistent pressure. There we go, and out it comes. So a nice change versus our previous cabs. How well you can see this, but to stop the grill buzzing or rattling against the cab, we need some sort of damping. Up until a few months ago we used foam tape. And I don't know how I thought of the idea, but anyway, had a brainwave, felt rather than foam, so that's what this is. This is a felt tape that we get custom made for us in this specific thickness and width, and foam tape is great for stopping things rattling, but we used a single-sided adhesive felt tape, so the tape should stick, in theory, to the grill and not to the cab, but foam gaskets tend to always stick to both sides, however much you don't want them to. Whilst the felt very much just sticks on the side with adhesive. Worst case scenario, it will unstick on that side with the adhesive, and you might have to get some double-sided tape your own, put it on to make it sticky again, but it's never inherently sticky. So the felt tape stays attached to the grill and does not attach to the cab. So this is one of our beautifully handmade grills, which are quite difficult to make to this standard. I think they're squarer and straighter and more perfect than any others I have seen. We probably fuss too much about them, because no one's ever complained about what they look like. Well, certainly not for a good decade, and we've been around 15 years. I know our early grills were not so pretty, but that was a long time ago, and it was almost happening in, well, it was happening in my garage in the early days. So here we have the drivers exposed, which you can't see because I've just tilted the camera up. There we go. This is two vintage 30s. And you can see the mounting screws in them. Now, please note, these are posi drive, so that's PZ2, screw head. If you're anywhere in the world apart from the USA, you should be able to get a posi-drive screwdriver. The USA still uses Phillips, so a medium-sized Phillips will work. You just have to be a bit more vigilant because Phillips cam out when the torque is high. They're prone to jumping out, but you can absolutely use a Phillips in a posi-drive crosshead, but you can't use a posi-drive in a Phillips crosshead because, I don't know how well you can see that, but if you've used posi-drive before, posi-drive has the extra little splines in between the main four. There's another four smaller ones. So you have a sort of little star shape there. Right, so I would recommend that if you haven't done this before, i.e. you don't work at barefaced, I don't care if you've done this with other cabs, you use a manual screwdriver. I'm probably going to use an electric screwdriver because I'm impatient and I've done this a lot of times. But these screws are actually machine screws, or bolts, but they're not technically a bolt because a bolt has an unthreaded bit along part of its length. They do not go into the wood. They are not wood screws. They go into T-nuts, which are threaded inserts with big teeth on them that we hammer in before the cab is built. It takes quite a smack to put them in, but if you push hard enough on the screw when trying to seat the head of the screwdriver, you will push the T-nut out. If you push the T-nut out, you will have a horrible time. So you only need to push hard enough to stop the screwdriver jumping out of the head. You do not need to push any harder. If you feel the T-nut push out, back off, and then try and get something underneath the head of the screw to pull the T-nut back in and then gently undo it. Do not, whatever you do, spin the screwdriver with the T-nut partly out because you can see those big teeth will rip a hole in anything, particularly the plywood that a cab is made of. So yeah, don't push the T-nuts out. I repeat, do not push the T-nuts out. We only use short screws because we know how long they need to be and we might as well save our time and weight by choosing the exact right length. So one driver out. We use spade connectors on these. The spade connectors, you need to get your polarity correct. The lead will be, the marked lead will be to positive, the unmarked lead will be to negative. That varies slightly depending on the era of the cab, so sometimes it's a black and white lead that's positive, sometimes it's a red and white lead. But it's the more interesting looking lead of the two that is positive, and the boring one, be it all black or all white, is the negative lead. That's a consistent theme, so interesting lead positive, boring lead negative. Make sure you get the polarity right, that really matters. Whatever you do, don't drop your screwdriver on the speaker cone. So that driver, by the way, popped out very easily. If you have an older barefaced cab, before we move to felt tape, you will find the foam tape that we've used as a gasket sticks it in. So, like I said, it's single-sided foam tape, but the unsticky side does stick after time. It really does weld itself, and it takes a lot of finger strength and patience, a firm increasing pull, or getting something flat underneath the baffle, but you don't want to damage the plywood. So if it's proving difficult, I suggest a paint scraper under there as a first port of call, and if that's not working, get the paint scraper under there to protect the plywood baffle of the cab, and then put a flathead screwdriver between the paint scraper and the frame of the driver. Make sure nothing is going to slip. Make sure you don't stab yourself. Make sure you don't stab a hole in the cone. And don't damage the cab either. Just be patient and careful, but accept that if the foam tape is sticking down, it will feel really glued in, and you will require firm pressure or tension over sufficient time for it to start peeling. And once it starts peeling, just keep pulling. Just use your strength. Once it starts moving, I recommend using your fingertips then, once it gets going. But it really depends how strong your fingers are. Mine are quite strong. So, driver out. So, rather than putting, you will find that if it's an older cab, foam tape's around here, but these new ones, we put the felt tape on the baffle. It's neatly cut, so you get no vibration, no air leaks, which is very important because there is a Helmholtz resonance at low frequencies, giving these cabs their big sounds. That's what's happening in the lows. So you don't need to worry about putting a new gasket on your replacement driver. The gasket is already there on the cab. We're going to put, this is going to be cool this, we're putting a G12M65 in instead. This was a convenient bit of customer confusion who ordered a custom driver for his uprising, but he ordered a 10-inch creamback, which clearly won't fit. Well, it would just fall through the baffle. But he suggested, well, we said you can't have a 10-inch creamback in your uprising, and then due to the confusion, it got this far to sort of end of hardware, and I said, hang on. We checked it before QC, and obviously there was an issue, so he's decided to go for a G12M65 at the bottom because he likes that. He's got that in another cab, and he trusted us to choose another driver to go with it. And we've chosen a really nice driver that we're a big fan of, and it's quite an overlooked driver. So we've gone with a G1265 Heritage, which is a cleaner and clearer driver than the G12M65 creamback. It's less bright and toppy than a vintage 30. It's a really nice driver for all sorts of genres, blues and soul and things like that. It's a good lead guitar driver, good rhythm guitar driver, somewhat overlooked. So nice to put that in. I think that they'll blend together very well. Now this top driver has two sets of leads attached to it because the second driver is daisy chained in parallel off the first driver. So these are 16 ohm drivers that we're putting in parallel to make an 8 ohm cab. So there we go. Let's get that out. Lovely vintage 30. This is what the cab's like. Oops. There's some screws there, I forgot about them. Oh, and I haven't bolted that in yet, so I shouldn't be tilting it. This is what the cab's like internally. You can see the angles of the AVD, which also makes for a better sound because the reflections internally are far less problematic than with a conventional, more box-shaped cab. So let's put on the red on there. These click into place, so you push them on until they click. Doesn't matter which way round they go, as long as you get your clarity right, but they can go either way up. They click in place. They're really good connectors, these, called fast-ons. They are fast-on. Much more sensible than soldering a connection, especially as you don't want to solder anywhere near a tinsel lead, because they don't like very high temperatures like solder, and they need to be able to flex back and forth. Drive it in. So we've put the G1265 Heritage at the top because we would say that is the more detailed driver, and the G12M65 creamback at the bottom. Now, putting the bolts back in, you really don't want to push the T-nuts out. So there's a lot to be said for seating them by hand. I am impatient and reasonably experienced, so I'm going to do it with the electric screwdriver. We are so pleased with this felt tape. It makes it so easy changing drivers and grills. It's just very handy. If there's ever anything where we're not happy at the QC stage, we can whip a grill off and double check something easily. And the customers want to experiment with different drivers, it's easy. And if you're buying an unloaded cab from us, it means we can put the felt tape onto the gasket, chuck a driver in, chuck a grill on, test it, make sure it's okay, and then in minimal time compared to before, take that grill off, take that driver out, put the grill back in, know you've got a great sounding cab, and know that when you get it, the gasket tape will be on there already, so you don't have to worry about gasketing your driver, and we don't have to worry that you used to include gasket tape in the past for unloaded drivers, but we then had to rely on people remembering to fit it. And sometimes people think, what's this for? I won't bother. Guitar cabs don't normally have this. It won't matter, but it does matter. We torque these up tight. If you're using a torque wrench, which I doubt you are, it's about 2 Newton meters, which doesn't sound that tight, but it feels it with a screwdriver. Off the top of my head, I cannot for the life of me think what that is in pounds-foot of torque. 2 Newton meters, I guess it's about 1¼ foot-pounds of torque, something like that. Between 1 and 2 foot-pounds of torque is plenty. On our drills, it's about 12 out of 24. It's about halfway on the torque wrench, but they're quite humpy, so I'm going to turn the speed down using the gearbox. And then I like to gradually tighten them all up rather than go all the way on one. Isn't that lovely? 2 drivers in, swapped over. Impedance is correct. So 2 16 ohm drivers. Strange historical anecdote, because the heritage drivers are heritage drivers. They say 15 ohms on them because old speakers used to be 7.5 ohms or 15 ohms. But it's all nominal values. It's frankly, yeah, rubbish. But call it what you will, 15 ohms, 16 ohms, 7.5 ohms, 8 ohms. It makes no difference, that's a nominal value anyway. So, drivers are in, grille is going back on, so we just slide it under the top corners, just tuck it under the top corners, under the top corners it goes. Go. And then do up the bottom corners. When doing these corners up, very low torque, you're using a wood screw and quite soft plywood, so really please do it by feel. If you strip the plywood, it's not the end of the world. You can do a very effective fix, which would be officially be approved according to the concept of quality as described in the Art of Zen and Motorcycle Maintenance, by putting a matchstick or cocktail stick or kebab skewer into that hole and then putting your screw in, and it will be absolutely perfect. Just like the Coke can shim is a perfect solution for something that is slipping and needs a thin aluminium shim. So, but yeah, I'd rather you didn't do that. But a bit like how on very lovely old vintage guitars with bolt-on necks, people will take them apart and find a bit of matchbox cardboard or something similar underneath the heel of the neck where it's bolted in, just to shim it to the right angle. There we go. So in real time, that, including my talking, has taken just under 21 minutes. So you can see this is not a difficult job. There is no fighting now we have the felt tape. We are really, really pleased with that, and we are really pleased with these cabs. This cab's actually going to someone who's already a barefaced convert with bass cabs, but he plays guitar too, so yay, all sorted. Davey might edit this down so there's less waffling and you don't have to be as patient. We shall see. Anyway, thank you very much. That is how to change drivers in a barefaced AVD guitar cab. It's different to other guitar cabs, but now with our new custom-made felt tape, it is easier than before. It's not difficult, a little more time consuming, works really well. We are super pleased, and I hope you will be. Sorry I didn't think of it sooner, but you know how it is. Sparks of inspiration, you never know when they're going to arrive. Thank you, I'll see you next time.